The mahogany conference table stretched endlessly before me, its polished surface reflecting the disapproving faces of my family like a funhouse mirror of contempt. 12 pairs of eyes bore into me with varying degrees of pity, disgust, and barely concealed satisfaction. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. At the head of the table sat Uncle Richard, his manicured fingers steepled as he delivered what he clearly believed to be my death sentence. Marcus, we've called this emergency family meeting because, frankly, your financial situation has become an embarrassment to the Blackwood name, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world's hierarchy. Living in that studio apartment, driving that ancient Honda, working as a freelance photographer, it's simply unacceptable for someone bearing our family crest. My cousin Jennifer smirked from across the table, her designer handbag positioned strategically to display the Hermes logo. I mean, I tried to help by getting you that job at the marketing firm, but you said you wanted to pursue your artistic vision, she said, making air quotes with her perfectly manicured nails. How's that working out for you? Laughter rippled around the table like poisoned water. These people, my blood relatives, were feeding off my supposed failure with the enthusiasm of vultures at a roadside carcass. I sat there, wearing my only decent suit, which admittedly was 3 years old and showing its age, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation that had followed me through family gatherings for the past 5 years. The trust fund disbursements are based on contribution to family prestige, my Aunt Margaret chimed in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Unfortunately, Marcus, your current lifestyle choices don't exactly inspire confidence in your ability to uphold our standards. Uncle Richard nodded gravely. Which brings us to the main point of today's meeting. We've voted, unanimously, I might add, to redistribute your portion of the family trust. Your continued financial irresponsibility has left us no choice. The words hit me like a physical blow. The family trust wasn't just money, it was my inheritance, my birthright, my connection to the Blackwood legacy that stretched back 4 generations. My grandfather had specifically included provisions for me in that trust, believing in my potential even when others didn't. You can't be serious, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Grandfather's will specifically. Grandfather's will included performance clauses, my cousin Bradley interrupted, straightening his silk tie. Clauses that give the family board the right to reallocate funds based on demonstrated success and contribution to family reputation. Your poverty reflects poorly on all of us, Marcus. Surely you can see that. I looked around the table, searching for a single sympathetic face. My cousin Sarah, whom I'd helped through her divorce, studied her. Manicured nails. My Uncle Thomas, whose gambling debts I'd helped cover years ago when I still had access to my trust fund, suddenly found the wall art fascinating. One by one, they all turned away, complicit in this financial assassination. The decision is final, Uncle Richard declared, gathering his papers with theatrical finality. Your trust fund will be redistributed among the other family members who have proven their worth. Perhaps this will motivate you to finally get serious about your career instead of chasing pipe dreams with that camera of yours. As the family began to file out, their chatter filled with plans for expensive vacations and luxury purchases funded by my stolen inheritance, I remained seated, paralyzed by the magnitude of their betrayal. Jennifer paused beside my chair, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Don't look so dramatic, Marcus. It's not like you were doing anything worthwhile with the money anyway, she said, patting my shoulder with mock consolation. Maybe now you'll finally grow up and get a real job. The world needs burger flippers too, you know. The conference room emptied, leaving me alone with the echo of their laughter and the bitter taste of betrayal. These people had just stolen my future, my security, my very identity as a Blackwood, and they'd done it with smiles on their faces and legal documents in their hands. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that their timing couldn't have been more perfectly, ironically, wrong. 3 months earlier, I'd been contracted by a tech startup to document their journey for what I thought was a simple corporate photography project. The CEO, a former MIT dropout named Alex Chen, had been impressed with my work and offered me something unprecedented: equity in the company in lieu of my standard fee. It was a risk that my family would have mocked mercilessly if they'd known about it. A real photographer would demand cash payment, they would have said. But I'd seen something in Alex's eyes, something in the revolutionary technology they were developing. Quantum computing applications that would transform data processing forever. Against all conventional wisdom, I'd taken the equity. 500,000 shares in Chen Quantum Solutions. 2 weeks ago, Google had acquired the company for $2.4 billion. My shares were worth $1.2 billion overnight. I hadn't told anyone, not my family, not my friends, not even my girlfriend Sarah, who'd started looking at me with increasing disappointment as my bank account dwindled. The paperwork was still being processed, the funds still being transferred, the reality still settling in my own mind. I'd planned to surprise everyone at my birthday party next month. Instead, they'd just handed me the perfect stage for a very different kind of revelation. I spent the following week in a state of surreal calm, watching my family's social media posts with new eyes. Jennifer's Instagram story featured her shopping spree, funded by what she called smart family financial planning. Bradley posted photos of his new Tesla, captioned, "Hard work pays off, #blessed." Uncle Richard shared an article about fiscal responsibility, adding his own commentary about tough love for family members who need guidance. They were spending my stolen money and congratulating themselves for their wisdom in taking it. But I had work to do. The acquisition had officially closed, and my account now showed numbers that still made my head spin. More importantly, I had access to resources that would make my family's wealth look like pocket change. I made a few phone calls, pulled some strings, and arranged something special for next Sunday's monthly family brunch, the same event where they'd traditionally announce trust fund distributions and family business decisions. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked David Martinez, my newly acquired assistant and former Silicon Valley executive, whom I'd hired specifically for his expertise in dramatic corporate presentations. We were standing in the parking lot of the country club where the brunch was being held, watching my family's cars arrive with their customary punctuality. "Absolutely," I replied, adjusting my still modest outfit. Jeans, a button-down shirt, and the same worn leather jacket I'd been wearing for 3 years. They made their decision based on appearances. Time to show them what appearances can hide. Inside, the family had claimed their usual table on the terrace, the conversation flowing as predictably as champagne at a wedding. I could see Uncle Richard holding court, probably regaling everyone with stories of his successful tough love intervention with me. Jennifer was showing off what appeared to be a new necklace, while Bradley gestured expansively about some business deal he was pursuing. I walked in alone, drawing the same mixture of pity and barely concealed amusement that had followed me for years. The conversation gradually died as they noticed my approach, replaced by the awkward silence that greets a recently disciplined child returning to the adult's table. "Marcus," Uncle Richard said with forced warmth, "how nice of you to join us. I hope you've had time to think about our conversation last week. Sometimes difficult decisions need time to—" "Actually," I interrupted, settling into my usual seat at the far end of the table, "I've been thinking a lot about family, about trust, and about what we really value." I pulled out my phone and checked the time. Perfect. In fact, I have something I'd like to share with all of you. Cousin Bradley rolled his eyes. Please tell me you're not going to show us more of your artistic photography. We're trying to enjoy our meal. Not photography, no. I stood up, walking to the terrace railing where I had a clear view of the sky. Actually, I wanted to thank you all for last week's meeting. It was illuminating. Really helped me understand where I stand in this family. Good, Aunt Margaret said briskly. Then you understand that our decision was for your own good. Sometimes people need motivation to reach their potential. Oh, I've definitely reached my potential, I replied, still watching the sky. The distant sound of rotor blades was growing steadily louder. In fact, I've exceeded it in ways you can't possibly imagine. Jennifer laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Marcus, please. Whatever inspirational speech you've prepared about finding yourself or following your dreams, can we skip it? Some of us have actual responsibilities to get back to. The helicopter sound was unmistakable now, drawing confused looks from other diners on the terrace. I smiled, feeling a surge of anticipation that was part excitement, part justice, and part simple, sweet revenge. See, the thing about photography is that it's taught me to see what others miss, I continued, raising my voice slightly over the increasing noise. Details, moments, opportunities. 3 months ago, I was hired to document a startup's journey. Most photographers would have demanded cash payment. The helicopter was visible now, a sleek black aircraft descending toward the country club's private landing pad. A facility I'd personally arranged to have installed this week through a shell company. But I saw something different in this company. Revolutionary quantum computing technology. So I took equity instead of cash. 500,000 shares in Chen Quantum Solutions. Uncle Richard frowned, his face showing the first hint of uncertainty. Marcus, what exactly are you? 2 weeks ago, I continued, my voice cutting through their confusion like a blade. Google acquired Chen Quantum Solutions for $2.4 billion. The helicopter was landing now, its rotors whipping the terrace umbrellas and drawing startled exclamations from the other diners. Through the windscreen, I could see the pilot I'd hired, former military, professional, impressive as hell. My shares were worth $1.2 billion overnight. The words hung in the air like a physical presence, freezing every face at the table in expressions of dawning horror and disbelief. Jennifer's champagne glass slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering against the flagstones. Bradley's mouth fell open like a landed fish. Uncle Richard's face drained of color so rapidly I thought he might faint. That's impossible, Aunt Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible over the helicopter's engines as they wound down. You're poor. You live in a studio apartment. You drive that terrible car. I drove that terrible car, I corrected, walking toward the edge of the terrace where a uniformed pilot was now approaching. I lived modestly because I believed in saving money, in living below my means, in investing wisely rather than flashing wealth for the sake of appearance. Concepts that apparently don't run in the family. The pilot reached our table and nodded respectfully. Mr. Blackwood? Your aircraft is ready for departure whenever you are. I turned back to my family, savoring the shell-shocked expressions on their faces like fine wine. The really beautiful part is that you made your decision to steal my inheritance based on your perception of my worth. You couldn't see past the surface, couldn't imagine that someone might choose simplicity over ostentation. Marcus, Uncle Richard started, his voice strangled. Surely you understand that we were only trying to help. Help? I laughed, the sound carrying more genuine amusement than I'd felt in months. You redistributed my trust fund among yourselves and called it tough love. Jennifer used my money to buy jewelry. Bradley bought a Tesla. You all celebrated your wisdom in teaching me about financial responsibility. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen displaying my account balance. The number was so large it looked fictional, like a prop from a movie about impossibly wealthy people. My trust fund was worth $3 million. You fought over it like dogs over a bone, congratulating yourselves for your fiscal wisdom. I tucked the phone away and straightened my worn leather jacket. I just became worth 400 times that amount. And I did it while you were mocking my choices, dismissing my career, and treating me like the family embarrassment. Cousin Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. But you never said anything. You let us believe. I let you reveal who you really are, I replied. And you did. Spectacularly. Every single one of you showed me that your love, your respect, your basic human decency is conditional on my ability to impress you with material success. I gestured toward the helicopter where the pilot was patiently waiting. David, my new chief of staff suggested I should forgive and forget. Move past this little family drama and focus on the future. But I realized something during your intervention last week. The terrace had fallen completely silent except for the distant murmur of other diners trying not to stare too obviously at our table. My family sat frozen like deer in headlights, probably calculating how much money they'd just insulted out of their lives. I realized that respect isn't something you can buy or inherit or demand, I continued. It's something you earn through your actions, your character, your treatment of others. And every single one of you failed that test when you thought I had nothing to offer. I started walking toward the helicopter, then paused and turned back one final time. Oh, and about the trust fund redistribution? I've instructed my lawyers to challenge it. Turns out that when you have a team of Harvard law graduates and unlimited resources, legal documents get scrutinized very carefully. The performance clauses you cited were actually invalidated by grandfather's final codicil, something Uncle Richard apparently overlooked in his eagerness to steal my inheritance. Uncle Richard's face went from pale to green. Marcus, surely we can discuss this like reasonable. The trust fund will be returned to me, with interest and penalties, I said calmly. But don't worry, I won't need it. I'm donating the entire amount to a foundation for struggling artists and photographers, people who choose passion over profit, who pursue their vision despite family disapproval, who understand that worth isn't measured in dollar signs. I reached the helicopter and turned for one final look at the table of stunned faces. Jennifer was crying now, probably calculating how much jewelry she'd have to return. Bradley looked like he was going to be sick, undoubtedly thinking about the Tesla payments he couldn't afford. Uncle Richard sat rigid with the expression of a man watching his world collapse in real time. The beautiful irony, I called out over the distance, is that you were right about one thing. My financial situation was an embarrassment to the Blackwood name, but not because I was poor, because I was rich beyond your wildest dreams, and you were too shallow, too cruel, and too blinded by your own greed to recognize it. I climbed into the helicopter, settling into the leather seat and buckling my safety harness. Through the window, I could see other country club members pulling out their phones, undoubtedly recording what would become the most talked about Sunday brunch in the club's history. As we lifted off, I watched my family growing smaller below us, still sitting motionless at their table like figures in a disaster painting. The pilot's voice came through my headset, professional and calm. "Where to, Mr. Blackwood?" I thought about it for a moment, looking out at the city spreading beneath us like a map of infinite possibilities. "Actually, let's swing by my old studio apartment first. I need to pack up my cameras and equipment." "Moving to somewhere bigger, sir?" I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of their disapproval, their constant judgment, their conditional love, all of it was falling away like shed skin. "Actually, I think I'll keep the studio for now. I like it there. It reminds me of who I really am, not who other people think I should be. As the helicopter banked over the city, my phone buzzed with the first of what would undoubtedly be dozens of frantic messages from family members, suddenly remembering how much they loved me, how proud they'd always been of my artistic vision, how they'd never really doubted my potential. I turned off the phone without reading them. Some lessons are expensive, some are priceless, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, they're the same thing. The helicopter carried me toward my future. A future built not on their approval or their money or their idea of success, but on my own vision, my own choices, my own definition of worth. Behind me, the country club grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Entirely, taking with it the last of my need to prove anything to anyone who couldn't see my value until it came with $1 billion price tag. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely, utterly, magnificently free. And that, I thought as we soared over the city, was worth more than all the money in the world.